Welcome to the Partnership for Awareness Speaker Series, Drugs in the Age of Fentanyl, with Ed Turner, Cynthia Airy, and Dr. Donna Clauser. My name is Toby McDonald Cho. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm the president of Partnership for Awareness. Partnership for Awareness seeks to educate, engage, and empower parents and youth on critical health and social challenges faced by children and teens in our area through partnership and coordination with local schools, community organizations, and law enforcement. So to our audience members, I hope as you came in, you had a chance to fill out a voucher for a box of Narcan. So if you haven't done so yet, I encourage you to go to the back table and grab a voucher. You just fill out your name and contact information, and at the end of tonight's program, you can trade in that voucher for a box of Narcan. Also, if there are any San Marino High School students, we have a raffle for Tony's Pizza gift cards, so please fill out a raffle ticket. There's also some merch from Song for Charlie. You're going to be learning more about Song for Charlie tonight, so please feel free to pick that up from the tables at the back. Okay, here's the boring disclaimer part, sorry. Tonight's program is being recorded by our fantastic San Marino High School Media Arts students, Alan and Nicholas. The content of this talk is intended for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your mental health professional or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding your or your child's condition. If you are in a crisis or think you may have an emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Thank you to our PFA sponsors. Your donations support parent education programs, Red Ribbon Week activities, school site grants, and scholarships for San Marino High School graduating seniors pursuing careers aligned with PFA's mission. If you enjoy tonight's program and are not already a PFA sponsor, consider becoming a sponsor by visiting our website, www.partnershipforowareness.org, to learn more. Also, at the back of the table, we have QR codes for tonight's participating organization, Song for Charlie and Change the RX. So we encourage you to learn more about the organizations for our speakers tonight. It is my pleasure to introduce PFA Programming Chair Jennifer Dials, who will introduce tonight's speakers.
Thanks, Toby, and welcome everyone this evening. I'm here to speak about our three speakers that are here this evening. Ed Turner is a husband, a father, and a businessman. In May of 2020, he lost his son, 22-year-old Charlie, who was poisoned by a counterfeit prescription pill. Since that time, Ed and his wife Mary, who's also here this evening, have dedicated themselves to informing young people about the new risks of self-medication and recreational drug use in the age of synthetic drugs like fentanyl. The Tiernans have formed a nonprofit charity, which we've mentioned this evening, is Song for Charlie, where they create and distribute fentanyl awareness and drug education materials online, on campus, and via social media. Their programs are designed to provide useful, fact-based resources to young people, families, and educators, with the goal of reducing drug use and encouraging healthier strategies for managing stress. Cynthia Airy. Cynthia is a San Marino resident, and she grew up here in our community. A San Marino High School alum, Cynthia is also a very dedicated community member and a PTA volunteer, having served as San Marino High School's PTA president for 2 years, as well as co-chairing San Marino High School's grad night on 2 separate occasions. In December of 2018, Cynthia and her husband Vincent, who's here also this evening, their family lost their son Matthew, a 19-year-old sophomore who was attending the University of Arizona due to fentanyl poisoning. In processing her family's grief over the past 5 years, Cynthia has begun to speak of her family's journey to help bring awareness to young adults about the danger of drug experimentation and being prepared to intervene with naloxone, or Narcan, is what we call it. Dr. Donna Klauser is here. She received her dental degree from the UCLA School of Dentistry and is a practicing periodontist. She started the nonprofit Change the RX, which we've spoken of, with a mission to ensure that naloxone, also known as Narcan, is accessible to everyone to help prevent an accidental overdose of the drug. After seeing a pharmacist presentation regarding the dangers of opioid use at her daughter's high school PTA meeting, Dr. Klauser immediately began her journey to educate young adults as well as her patients regarding the slippery slope of opioid addiction. Dr. Klauser experienced her own opioid dependence after a difficult surgery 21 years ago and has been dismayed to discover how many addictions begin when patients are prescribed opioids after dental procedures. That there is no room for judgment, only love and help for our fellow humans is paramount in her message. As we mentioned, if you're coming in, please take note. We're handing out Narcan to the first 50 attendees. If you can pick up a voucher in the back and fill out your name. We'll be giving those out at the end of Dr. Klauser's presentation, how she is going to demonstrate how you would use that in an emergency situation. So please welcome tonight's panel of speakers and provide your support as they share their deeply personal experiences this evening. Thank you. Ed Tierney.
Trying to get that cursor off the screen there. I don't know if I was successful. Thanks everyone for coming out. My name is Ed Ternan. My wife Mary's here with me. And we founded Song for Charlie, as you heard in my bio there, after we lost our son in May of 2020. And since that time, we've come a long way in a short time, because when Charlie died, this hockey stick spike of youth drug deaths was really just starting to take off. Now, the area's experience a year and a half prior, when Matthew died, nobody knew anything about what was going on with this issue. And Mary and I were struck when Charlie died in May of 2020 that people were starting to talk about it, but the information was in the wrong places. So Charlie died at Santa Clara University, and we started Googling what's fentanyl, and we found out that there was a bulletin on the local DEA's website, on the local coroner's, medical examiner's website, story in the Mercury News on page 6 about a high school girl who had died. And we're like, you could put that information there for the next 10 years and Charlie and his friends would never see it, because that's not where kids get their information. So we founded Song for Charlie to take this message and warn them about these counterfeit pills and fentanyl and other drugs as fast as we could. Take out the middleman, say it in a way that's relatable, and get them talking to each other, keeping each other safe. So we've been doing that for a couple of years, and tonight I'm going to put a little bit different spin on it, because you'll see here, actually I have a pointer, don't I? All right. We now just launched the new Drug Talk, and this is a parent portal. We were approached by the state of California, the California Department of Healthcare Services, in December of last year, and they said, we love what you're doing, we need more of it, what should we do together? And we said, what about the parents? Now, there's two things that are new about the new Drug Talk: the drugs and the talk. And that's what I'm going to try and get through to you today. The drug landscape is completely different than it was when we were all growing up. It's changed in the last 7, 8, or 9 years, dramatically, and it's not changing back. Number two, we know a lot more now about how to talk to kids effectively about drugs. We have to integrate the mental health crisis that we're going through, the stress and anxiety that our kids are going through. And so we've launched this portal in August of this year. It's brand new. I hope you'll go to thenewdrugtalk.org. There's cards in the back with QR codes on them where you can go there. I don't have time to tell you everything I want to share with you tonight, but it's all there on this website, and it's laid out in a very accessible way to get you comfortable having this talk with your kids in an effective way. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is, we believe really strongly in getting fact-based information out there in a non-alarmist way. So what I tell the kids when I make these presentations is I'm going to start at the end. I like those movies where they show you the last scene and then they go back and tell you how you got there. That's what I'm doing. This is what I want you to leave here with. This is the takeaway. It's very simple. There are no real prescription pills online, on campus, on the street, at the party, in the gym. None in 2023. This started happening years ago, and when I first started talking to people about this, and I said to some partners we were working with, they said, don't lie to kids. Don't exaggerate, or they will never trust you about anything. You'll lose them. They said, be careful that if you say there's no real Xanax out there online, sure enough, some kid's going to find some Xanax and tell his friends, and you're done. Now, you fast forward to 2023, nobody tells me that anymore. They're all fake. Sorry. One of the ways my grief comes out is just randomly just emerges. So I apologize.
There's Kleenex.
Thank you. If I need the Kleenex, we're in trouble. So this is what we know for sure. Some of this stuff we know for sure, and some of it we're tracking. What we do know is that every single one of these commonly known prescription medications have been seized by law enforcement in the United States, and they contain fentanyl. They're completely fake, and they're made of fentanyl. And people have died from taking every one of those fake products. We know that for sure. We know that fentanyl has been found in cocaine, heroin, Molly, and methamphetamine. Often this is from cross-contamination back in the supply chain, but it is happening. And we know that people have died when they thought they were taking one of these substances and got fentanyl instead. Now, we're watching this category of things very closely. Like I said, we're really committed to figuring out the truth. We hear a lot of stories in the media about marijuana or fentanyl in marijuana, and people overdosing on joints. And we haven't confirmed that that's actually ever happened. And the reason is that the fentanyl molecule burns off when you ignite it. That's why when you see stuff on the news and you see like stories about the Tenderloin in San Francisco, you see them inhaling the vapors by heating it on foil. That's because if you ignite it, it goes away. So very, very tough to consume fentanyl on a lit bowl or joint of marijuana. Also, think of it this way. Try to imagine how many billions of puffs of marijuana are taken in the United States of America every day. If this was happening, it would be front page news, so we would know it. So we don't think that's really happening. Vapes, we hear that it's in vape cartridges, have not been able to confirm this. A lot of times what happens is a young person will take a gummy or a vape, and because of the THC content these days, they'll have a really bad experience. They're 8th grade, 7th grade, and first responders are called to the school. Out of an abundance of caution, what do? They administer Narcan. And the media goes, they took gummies and they gave them Narcan, therefore there was fentanyl in the gummies. We've never seen a lab report that shows that that's actually been confirmed. Now we're watching that. You theoretically could put fentanyl in vape resin. You could put it in a gummy just like you put it in a pill, but we're not seeing that happen yet. Okay, that's facts. That's the facts page. Next one I want to do is let you watch a 90-second video. This video is a chapter from a 30-second educational film that we put together that you can download on the New Drug Talk website. And it just kind of gives you an overview of what's going on. And after the video, I'm going to let Cynthia tell her story.
When I was growing up, we talked about the drug landscape in terms of a path. But today, kids are faced with a landscape that's less like a pathway, more like a minefield, where their first, second, or third step out there could be their last because you don't know what's in those substances. The counterfeit pills that are on the market today are very difficult to distinguish from the real prescription pills. They're made in what's called a pill press, and the drug producers, illicit drug producers, get the dyes, the stamps, and they put them in these pill presses, and they stamp out pills that look like a real Xannibar or a real Percocet. The most commonly counterfeited pill is what's presented as an Oxy or a Percocet, and it's stamped with an M on one side and a 30 on the other.
The U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency tells us that 60% of counterfeit pills that are out there right now contain potentially lethal doses of fentanyl. And so many of the pills that people might think are real, they might think that pill that they encounter on social media that somebody tries to sell them, or that they encounter, through a drug dealer who's trying to sell them something, or even just through a friend who's passing them something, that pill, more likely than not, is not what they think it is. It hasn't been prescribed by a doctor. It hasn't been dispensed by a pharmacy. And in fact, it's fake, and more likely than not that the amount of fentanyl in one of these pills could kill someone.
It's so cheap to make, and they're making these pills for cents, and they're selling them for dollars, 10, 15, 20, and they may have made it for 50 cents. But when somebody dies, that person who's selling them this, they're not thinking about that person. They're thinking about their profits. The cost of doing business includes some downsides, like maybe they lose some customers.
We lost, 108,000 people last year to overdose. And that's just the fatalities. There are a lot of non-fatal overdoses as well. Years ago, if someone was using heroin, it would probably be far into their use before they would be at the point where they could overdose. Now, you can overdose with your first pill. It's just a different situation.
You need to turn the lights up a little. Okay. My name is Cynthia Airy, and I feel really grateful to be here with my friends and my family, plus Ed from Songs for Charlie, my periodontist, and my friend Dr. Donna Clauser, founder of Change the RX. Thank you to PFA, Jennifer and Toby, for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm here to honor my late son, Vincent Matthew Airy, Jr., and to share the horror of fentanyl poisoning. Can't even say it. So many have asked me to tell my story, and it is really not my story, but my family's story. We were a typical family, lucky to be living in San Marino, happily married to Vincent, and lucky to be raising our 3 children, Matthew, Thomas, and Mary Jane. I was fortunate to be a stay-home mom, a PTA mom, a sports mom, and a cheer mom. My life was great. Now, unfortunately, I am the face of the unimaginable, the face of a parent who lost their child to fentanyl poisoning. It's hard to imagine that this was almost 5 years ago. It was in December, and a pretty typical day. Matthew and Thomas were away at college. Mary Jane was preparing for finals at San Marino High School. Both boys would be home soon for Christmas, and our annual ski trip was after Christmas. Vincent and I went to a friend's house for a dinner party. My phone rang, and it was Matthew's friend was trying to tell me, or not knowing how to tell me, that Matthew was dead. It is difficult to express the shock, terror, and sorrow I felt simultaneously. It was unimaginable and even hard to comprehend. We had to go to his college. We had to go quickly. Perhaps we could save him, or it was a mistake. I called Matthew frantically. Our friends arranged the flights, and off we went. I prayed on the plane. I prayed it wasn't true, and praying we could fix it. When we arrived at his apartment, the horrific scene played out before my eyes. Police, fire trucks, and the coroner were all there. It was true. My 19-year-old son was dead. I felt like I had left my body and was floating above the chaos below. The shock set in, and the sorrow and never-ending crying began. We had to call Thomas and Mary Jane. I had to call my mom. Vincent had to call his brother. How could my sweet son be dead? That awful night, we had no answers. We knew nothing. We did not know how Matthew died until we received the autopsy. Fentanyl poisoning was the cause, and we were all like, fentanyl? What is that? Unfortunately, found out from his roommate that he received a Xanax that turned out to be fake from a girl in his building during finals. That simple, fake Xanax pill ended my sweet son's life. Matthew's case has been ruled a homicide and is an open investigation in Pima County. Tragically, as you all know, there will There are many more cases like Matthew's. I am not optimistic that justice will ever be served for him. So what do I say about loss and grief? Grief is never ending. It softens with time. The first year of Matthew's death was just a blur. First birthday without him, the anniversary of his death, and all the holidays were unbearable. I thought about him every minute of every day. We were so mad that this had happened to our sweet son. We were so mad that he let this happen, and so mad he wasn't here. I went to see 2 mediums. We went to family therapy, and I read books and tried everything to stop the pain. In reality, there is no stopping for grief, just time. I could hardly utter his name. Our family was broken. Thomas and Mary Jane suffered. All the focus is on parents when a child dies, but the sorrow and what could have been to the siblings alive is unrelenting and runs deeper. Slowly, things returned to our new normal. Our daughter Mary Jane was brave and returned to San Marino High as a sophomore. She held her head high and faced her new reality. I am grateful to her friends who gave her love and compassion. Thomas had the courage to fly back to college at Syracuse University and try to finish his freshman year. Then COVID hit and we were all back home under the same roof. That was a hidden blessing. We began to say Matthew's name and tell funny stories that we all knew. Matthew was a character. He was particular about his food and loved to try new things. 2 things he had a passionate disdain for were cream cheese and avocados. Every time I peel an avocado, I think of him. It's hard to believe a California kid that hated avocados. We began to focus on the best parts of Matthew, his quirky humor, his love of music, and his love of sports. We laughed at his special debating skills. He always knew a little bit about many different topics and could, in the end, convince you he was right. It is still difficult and hard to accept, but I do feel his presence and feel him cheering our family on. I know he was cheering on Thomas when he graduated from college this past May. That was one of the happiest times since Matthew died. Watching Thomas, I was so proud of him and how far he had come. I kept thinking Matthew would be so happy for his little brother. We celebrated with friends and family, and it was a perfect day. I mentioned Matthew's love of music. He loved the oldies, hard rock, rap, EDM, and always seemed to know the words to the songs. Matthew liked the band Supertramp, which was really ironic because it was popular when I was growing up. When I hear the song, Goodbye Stranger, I think about Matthew. These lyrics really resonate with my family, and I hope they will with you too. Here's just a sample. It was an early morning yesterday. I was up before the dawn. I really have enjoyed my stay, but I must be moving on. Goodbye, Mary. Goodbye, Jane. Will we ever meet again? Feel no sorrow, feel no shame. Come tomorrow, feel no pain. And I will go on shining, shining like brand new. I'll never look behind me, my troubles will be few. Matthew will forever shine in our lives. My story should be a warning to you. What is happening with the fentanyl epidemic is a preventable tragedy. Talk to your kids honestly and from the heart. I wish that I wasn't here speaking out about fentanyl poisoning. I wish things were different. All it takes is one fake pill, one moment, and our life is changed forever. Thank you for allowing me to share my story.
Thank you, Cynthia. That's, Mary and I know how hard that is to do. That's a lot. It's happening too much. So what we want to do tonight is we want to make you really smart about this. Like I said, when Matthew died, nobody knew anything about this. When Charlie died, people knew a little bit, When I go to high schools now, I say, how many people know about fentanyl? And a lot of hands go up. It wasn't that way 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But I think where we are as a country is the level of awareness has gone up. And we need now to get to a level of knowledge, because awareness is knowing something's going on, and knowledge is knowing what's going on. So my goal tonight, in just a couple of slides, is to give you some real, useful, factual information to make you, what things you need to know. And then the doctor's going to talk to you about a couple of things you can do to protect young people from harm. So whenever you hear the word in the media that the fentanyl is described, it's always 100% of the time described in this way: a potent synthetic opioid. Am I right? You can't read an article that doesn't use those 3 words. So let's break that down, working from the back, the now. It's an opioid. What does that mean? Well, it's not a poison. It's a medicine. The poison is in the dose. That's a very old, 1,000-year-old saying in the world of pharmacology. It's a very effective medicine. And it comes on really fast, and it wears off really fast. And in a medical setting, that's really good. That's properties that you want. So it began being used for surgery and for cancer pain and so forth, like in the 60s. And the way I describe it is, if you break a bone and end up in an ambulance, they're going to give you a shot of fentanyl, and you're going to thank them for it, because it's really, really effective. Now, that fentanyl that's used in medical settings, that comes out of clean rooms and pharmaceutical company laboratories and production facilities, is not what's killing our kids. What's killing our kids is the bootleg version that's mixed up in 5-gallon paint buckets and 55-gallon drums in somebody's basement. And if you don't think that's how it's really happening, that's really how it's happening. One of the problems of trying to stop it is these labs are so small and easy to move that if you shut one down, they just open one up down the street. It's really not that hard to make. So it's super potent, 50 times more potent than heroin. So think of it this way. That's like Jack Daniels that's 4,000 proof. Right? So let's say you're having a party and you have your friends over and you have your 4,000 proof Jack Daniels and you want your 10 friends to have a shot, and you line up 10 shot glasses on the counter, on the bar. How many drops of 4,000 proof Jack Daniels do you have to get in each shot glass so that everybody gets a buzz and nobody dies? Answer? Impossible to know. You can't measure it that way. Somebody's going to get nothing and somebody's going to die. That's what's happening with these fake pills, because this potent stuff, you cannot take this much powder and distribute it among a batch of this much powder and then press it into pills. You can't get that distribution either. It's never going to happen. Not unless you're at Johnson & Johnson factory. Now, the thing that's really key is that fentanyl is synthetic. So most of the drugs we grew up with came from the earth. They're organic, they're plant-based. Cannabis, alcohol, cocaine, heroin, you name it. Meth, ecstasy, they started emerging 20, 25 years ago, whatever it was. These are semi-synthetic or synthetic drugs, and then fentanyl. And what's happened is the drug producers have figured out that this is a better mousetrap. Because if you need more fentanyl, you don't have to grow any plants, and you don't need land or water or manpower or trucks to move it around. You just add a night shift and stir up some more. So now you've got this raw material for making your street drugs, and it's got 2 properties that you love if you're a drug dealer. It's really strong and it's really cheap. Because what happens if the supply of any commodity is absolutely unlimited? Make it on demand. The cost of it goes through the floor. So it's all profit. This is not going to go away. Fentanyl is a placeholder for this new seismic shift in the drug landscape, which is chemicals. Now you're going to hear about xylazine. You're going to hear about the nitazine family of opioids. All of this is coming, and your kids are going to bump into this stuff that we never had to deal with. Okay. So I'll cruise over this really quickly, but this just makes the point that, why would people want to kill their customers? Why would drug dealers want to kill their customers? It's a new business model. When I was growing up, I wanted to get some cocaine in college. I knew it was coming from Colombia, and as it worked its way north, every time it changed hands, somebody would cut it back and make it weaker. That's how they took their money out. Now, the business model is find the most potent raw material you can find, extend your batch yield as long as you can, and take home all the money. And if some people die in the process, now, if you have, which we think there are at least 500 million counterfeit prescription pills floating around the United States on any given day, if you ever count up how many Xanax tablets are floating around in the United States, it's in the trillions. We're a pill-popping culture. The fake ones out there are a percentage of that, and even if only a small percentage of the people who take them actually die, that's still a big number. So that's what's going on. Now, what's its impact on us? This here is drug overdose deaths. Here at the bottom there, if you can see my pointer, is the age at the time of death. And this vertical axis is the percentage of the illegal substance in the bloodstream at the time of death. So that if you were like in high school in 2012 and you died of a drug overdose, 40-some% of the time, it was, work your way over, prescription drugs were present. Okay? You got heroin, benzos, cocaine, methamphetamine, and down here in yellow, some fentanyl is kind of on the scene. 5 years later, people addicted to opioids start dying in droves. Long-term opioid users, people addicted to heroin, they can't control their dose anymore because the drug dealers are putting fentanyl. Imagine my business model, my cocaine example. Imagine now you have a raw material that you can add to your heroin and it actually makes the quality go up and the price go down. They figured that out and they started putting in the heroin supply without telling the users. So now you've got people dying here in this phase of fentanyl, and it kind of peaks here in the, right, kind of as you expect. People further along in their drug use, probably already dependent, are dying because they can't control their dose. Fast forward to today, 2022 numbers. Fentanyl's killing everybody. If you die of a drug overdose in the United States of America today, it's fentanyl. And it's moved from, look at how this has moved over this way. If you're in high school now and you die with drug-related death, it is about 70-some-odd% of the time fentanyl is present. And sometimes it's present with other drugs like cocaine or Molly, but we know how those drugs act and we know how fentanyl acts, and even in a polysubstance drug death like that, we know what the culprit is. It's fentanyl. The fentanyl is what's killing your kids. This is what we have to tell them about. This is another way of looking at the same thing. What we did here is we took that last slide and we just focused on 25 and under. This is an example of the social media post we put out under our Song for Charlie brand to get to young people. So this is pretty dramatic. I want you to watch what happens to the H and the RH over this time period. People who are longtime heroin users, they can't find heroin anymore. It's all fentanyl. For economic reasons, it's been forced out of the drug supply. I'm sorry to keep hitting you with all this bad news, but your kids need to know this. It's also been found in cocaine. The numbers are way lower in terms of real numbers, but you can see the trend here is that if in 2021 a young person, high school or college age, died with cocaine in their system, every once in a while there's a little bit of fentanyl contamination in there. And now, if you die with cocaine in your system, fentanyl is also there, right? So it's more than tripled in 10 years for youth-related cocaine deaths also involve fentanyl. We think that's usually cross-contamination back in the supply chain, mixing and packaging two white powders at the same time. It doesn't take much fentanyl to get into a bag of cocaine for that line to be fatal. Now, let's frame the problem properly here. What's happening is not that more young people are using hard drugs. That's not what's happening here. This blue line is a survey by an organization, the survey I think is, the title of it is called Monitoring the Future. And this is self-reported, and some people go, well, if you ask high school kids what drugs they're taking, they're not gonna tell you the truth. But a statistician will tell you, if you ask them this question the same way over 40 years, the trend holds. So they ask these kids, what drugs have you used, specifically what we call hard drugs, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, prescription drugs, ecstasy, have you used in the last 3 months, 6 months, or a year? The initiation of hard drug use has been steadily declining, which puts a lie to the myth that drug education doesn't work. Drug education does work. Kids know that those are risky substances they're using nonetheless. But at the same time that that this trend line, the initiation of use is going down, deaths have skyrocketed. It's not the kids' behavior that's changed. It's the environment they navigate in that's changed. So even if only about 10% of kids in high school are messing around with pills, those kids are not at risk of long-term addiction, where you can get them into recovery one day and maybe get them back. They're at risk of death the first, second, or third time they try this stuff. That's what's happening. So what we try to do is close this knowledge gap, and this is where our awareness stuff comes in. Just real quick, only about, we started our work and went from 27 to 36% of high school kids kind of roughly know about the fentanyl situation. They rate fentanyl lower than these other drugs that we teach them about at school, and yet 12 times more of them die fentanyl-related deaths than they do cocaine and heroin combined. So there's this, in drug education, there's this theory called the misperception of harm, right? If you don't know there's sharks in the water, you may jump right in. It's not that hard to put a sign up that says there's sharks in the water. And a lot of people will avoid the water altogether. Some people will go in and be very careful, but at least you reduce the harms. If you don't understand the harm, then people still keep getting hurt. So you heard me in the film say that the drug landscape today is more like a minefield. And so that's what we have to be telling our kids. It's a non-judgmental talk. It's a dialogue. I hope you'll go to the new drug talk and look at all the tools and resources and videos we put there so that you can have this conversation with your kids in the home. Because it's not, they didn't cause this problem, but it's happening to them and their friends. It's landing right in their lap. So we try to get them engaged, and hopefully you can help us get your kids engaged in being part of the solution by educating them and their friends about, you need to stay away from this stuff. And just like there's no real chicken in a nugget, there's no real Xanax on Snapchat, don't do it. If it doesn't come out of a bottle that has 2 names on it, yours and your doctor's, don't put it in your mouth. That's our warning. Now, I'm gonna let the doctor talk about Narcan and how you can maybe save a life with, you know what the beautiful thing about Narcan is? We have an antidote for opioid overdose, and it's called naloxone, and everybody should know all about it. I'll let the doctor do that.
So I'd like you to go ahead. My name is Dr. Donna Klauser. I want to thank Cynthia for her bravery for speaking about her beautiful son. And I've been working on my nonprofit for a few years. I love punk rock music. When I turned 50, I promised my mom, okay, I got every degree known to mankind, and now it's my turn. So I go and I see about 3 bands a week, and every time I go see a band, somebody is lighting up, taking cocaine, marijuana, and I'm looking around going, geez, aren't we supposed to be relaxing and enjoying the music? And then I started hearing about the young overdose deaths with counterfeit pills, and I said, okay, this is it. 21 years ago, I had my daughter, my beautiful daughter, I had a C-section. And at UCLA, I was teaching there, so I had my C-section there, and I had something called a nosocomial infection. It was bad. It was a bad abscess. So I had to go see my physician. I would go to the physician and tell him, I need more Norco. This is not going away. And he said, oh, you're healed. And I went, oh, what's going on? And he goes, I think you need to go see somebody. So I went to go ahead, and someone actually helped wean me off of the Norco. That's when I realized how quickly that you could get addicted. Today's drugs, it's not like that. It's one pill can kill. It's so quick. So my American Dental Association selected me to go ahead and work on my passion project. My passion project was something for the opiate crisis, because my fellow colleague who actually wanted to do it, and we thought it was too overwhelming. He decided to drop out to learn how to place implants, so I went ahead and took over his project because that's how I roll. So I've been embedded in the music community for about last 4 years, learning and understanding why people take drugs. Why do they take drugs? And they tell me, Donna, I stopped taking drugs, methamphetamine. I'm like, you took? In my head, you took the meth? Well, tell me a little bit more. And they tell me, I stopped taking it because I thought I didn't want my mom to come into my home and find me dead and find my starving cats. So a lot of the people that I speak to, they feel really comfortable with me because I love the music just like them, and I do not judge them. I don't, they're welders. I could care less who you are. If you're cool, you're nice to me. We talk to the bands and we listen to music. I'm great with that. But I started to really understand a lot of this was mental health crises, and a lot of this was also from not having wonderful parents, like the Aries, like Ed's family. A lot of people are hurting out there, so they go to medication, illegal. And people like, we have our therapist here in the house, Yin Yin Lin, she's also my patient. Yeah. And so when I started looking at this, I said, okay, I would go to the booths, and this is booths that are distributing fentanyl strips. Have you heard of fentanyl strips? Right, they test your drug to see if they have fentanyl on them. And the young man at the fentanyl strip had a t-shirt on, and it said, I don't use alone. And I went, wow. So I walked up to him and I said, what does that mean? And he said, when we do our drugs, I make sure that somebody is awake, so in case they need to revive me or him. And I went, okay, yeah. So I'm thinking, how do we bring this to our youth? Because our kids are now being offered these pills to take the edge off. Take the edge off for what? Post-pandemic, the isolation really was quite horrible for many of our youth. Anxiety, my 21-year-old has been seeking mental health care services since she was probably in the 2nd grade. She has ADHD and depression. So I understood this community really, really well. And now she comes with me to actually to help with distributing the Narcan at the Boys and Girls Club. So there is no judgment with this. We're dentists. There's a few dentists here. Dr. Amy Tran. Oh, Dr. Kathleen Huang. Great. So we were at the House of Delegates last week, and there was a president-elect that was running for a campaign, and he cold called me and he said, hey, I want to see if you're interested in talking to me. And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, you're a periodontist. Don't you know so-and-so? And I said, I do. And he goes, aren't you involved? And I said, no, I have a nonprofit. And he goes, tell me more. So I told him about it, and he says, I'm 25 years recovered alcoholic. And I said, wow, fantastic. He goes, Donna, I used to take drugs. I said, really? As a dentist? He goes, yeah. And I said, wow. And he goes, I found recovery 2 times. Had to go to rehab. He now serves on the White House's Council for Wellbeing Committee, and he serves with our Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, about well-being and about mental health. And we have in our organization about 10 deaths due to suicide, drug addiction in our organization. In medicine, there's 300 deaths a year, surgeons, because of alcohol, drug, and suicide. So people are suffering, and this is the time not to be judgmental. So I love when people say, Donna, you were addicted to norcoid? Yeah, I had no idea. And it's really important because we have to remove the stigmatization. That is dead and done with, and that's how we can keep our kids alive. And if you open up your QR code, so your camera, you put up the camera and you put it on the QR code, and it'll pop up the website. In the middle of the website, there is a link to the DEA. What I want to do, not too many kids here, I want to make sure that you show your kids how to actually turn the drug dealers that are on Snapchat, turn them in to the DEA. There's a direct link. You could do that through the app as well to turn them in, because I know I'm on Instagram because I'm following all these bands and I have people soliciting me to buy drugs all the time. I'm like, oh great, oh, what's your name? Oh yeah. And I turn them into the DEA. So that's something that you could do to have your children be empowered. Talk to them, just like Ed said. Talk to them. It's really, but talk to them without this being judgmental, because they're going to hide things from you. And then when they see and hear about Cynthia's story and about, also with Ed, that's really important because they're going to be looking at you and realizing, this was really so tragic. Also, I did want to go ahead and, Yin, if you could come in, could we get a chair? So we're going to go ahead and just simulate someone is at home, and most happenings happen at home. And can you grab our Boy Scout? Can you grab a Narcan for me? Can you bring it up for us, please? Thank you. So when you see someone that you suspect, or your child, they're at home and they're not being responsive, what have you, you're talking to them, hey, and they're cold and they're clammy and they've got pupils that are, can you open it up for me? Thank you. And then they're not responding. What they're asking us to do, instead of first trying to call for help, is actually administer the Narcan first. So it's the first dose, yeah. Oh, thank you. So the first one, so what you do is you put, so there's a little spigot right in there, you open it up and you put it inside the first nostril and you hold the other nostril and you push all the way down the plunger. So when they wake up a little bit, yeah, okay, no, and then go back to sleep, then they do the other nostril, hold the other nostril, and then you plunge it into the other nostril. And then at that time, if you have a pulse and they're breathing, great. They're usually laying down, you turn them to the side because they're gonna start to throw up. So on our board, we have a retired Marine firefighter, and he'll usually tell me, Donna, this is the time when I back up, because if it's a big dude, they're gonna start coming swinging at me because you broke their high. So you'll hear that as well. For children, this is different. It's usually the first time that they're doing something like this, so that's pretty unusual for that to happen. So it's really important to also to know what happens if you give this to someone and they're intoxicated. Their blood pressure is going to come up, they might throw up a little bit, but that's about it. So err on the side of caution always, but try to administer first. Then you go ahead and reach out to 911, especially if you're alone, and then CPR. 50 to 2, 30 to 2, 30 compressions to 2 breaths. Really important to keep them alive. You have 2.5 minutes. That's it, 2.5 minutes. So that's why administer first, and then later on you call for help, and then you stay with them. Parents, when you get home, when you receive this, open up the box. Grab your kid. Talk to them how you're supposed to use this. Please use Ed's information on our website, since we're in the naloxone distribution project. We have access to Narcan. I'd much rather use Ed's. So I'm going to actually be updating my website with his information. Talk to your kids. Make sure that they have it now in their Ziploc bag. Yeah. Put it in their backpack. Or if they're going to go to a party, yeah. My daughter has 3 of them in her roommates, and they all carry with them to parties, or to the library, or to class. Yeah. Last thing I'll leave you with is my dental organization president. I really wanted to have a selfie with him, and we were at the meeting, and I ran up to him and I said, "Hey, can I get a picture?" And he looked at me inside out and he went, "You go to a lot of concerts." And I said, "I do, yeah, I'm 50, and now I have to reserve the right." And he goes, "Oh," and then I pulled up my picture of my phone and I showed him Rat Key, who's an African-American trio, young men from the Midwest who opened up for Foo Fighters, and he's holding Narcan next to me in a damn t-shirt. This is my gig jacket, by the way. And he looked at me and goes, "Okay." So he shook my hand and said, "Thank you, this is wonderful, you're doing this." He said, "Why aren't you showing this more on social media?" And I said, "My goal is actually to talk to families. This is my dream. This is it." And the musicians that I follow and they support, that's great, but that's a different genre of people that, it's a group of people that really, they've already experienced rehabilitation, recovery, which is great. This, we're just trying to save lives. We're trying to save Gen Z, my generation, my daughter's generation. And that's really quite important. So that same president, he was at a pickleball tournament. I just heard from another friend of mine, and she said, "Donna, we needed you." And I said, "What happened?" She said, they were in a pickleball tournament, somebody came out of the bathroom, 2 young people, girls, and one of them passed out. And then they looked at each other and they said, "Who has Narcan?" No one. Not even the president. That's the one I thought I'd been like, really? Not even him. So he had to go on his hands and knees and start performing CPR. So please, parents, go to CVS, pharmacy. We have a pharmacist in-house, Cindy Young, yes. And then Mike Young, oh yes, another pharmacist, fantastic. Please, go to the pharmacy, buy it. It's $50. Keep this one in your medicine cabinet. The other ones go with your kids all the time. 77 degrees temperature. With Cynthia's, that's how you want to keep it. With Cynthia's help, we've actually distributed 250 Narcan to the Boys and Girls Club of Southern California. We're going now up the state and central and the northern coast as well. And I also wanted to tell her that when we made our last donation of Narcan, the counselor walked up to me and said, you know, thank you so much for this. This is life-saving, but our kids are dying because of suicide. Yin and Lim. We need more mental health experts to help our kids. Thank you.
Can we get one more hand for Cynthia? Now I'd like to invite Cynthia, Ed, and Donna to answer any questions from audience members. So does anyone have any questions? Yes.
I have a simple question. If you don't know what the OD is or that someone's non-responsive, does Narcan work for any kind of?
Just opiates.
Just opiates. So that it's not harmful.
That's a good question. And when I explain this to people, the importance of having naloxone around, Narcan, like really can't be overstated. We don't have an antidote for methamphetamine overdoses. We don't have an antidote for cocaine overdoses. We have a product that reverses an opioid overdose. It's like a miracle. It's like a cure for cancer. It's a no-brainer. Once you pull the Narcan out, someone's already dying, right? Now, people say, well, when I say Narcan reverses an opioid overdose, think about it another way. Narcan is the only thing that reverses an opioid overdose. So if you come on someone who's down and you suspect an opioid overdose and you're giving them CPR, you're buying time for the first responders to get there who are going to give them Narcan as soon as they get there. So, and the sooner you get the Narcan in them, the better. Because once the breathing stops, you have about 8 minutes before the organs start shutting down. So having it at the ready is super important. And because it only does that one thing, if you make a mistake, you thought it was an opioid overdose, but it wasn't, no harm, no foul. Doesn't do anything.
They'll just get really sick.
Who's first?
Should we, why don't we bring the mic around? So,
Yeah, well, I can,
Who is it?
I'll be loud enough.
What is the geographic and demographic distribution of fatal or serious opioid overdoses and fentanyl deaths?
Another great question. You know, we could get into the whole history of the opioid crisis and how it started kind of with blue-collar workers, mostly whites in the Midwest and Appalachia, right? Those people, when you saw the heroin deaths, the fentanyl deaths and the heroin supply, where they cracked down on the supply of prescription pills, the legitimate ones that were being diverted from legitimate factories, when they cracked down on the pill mills, people moved to black tar heroin. That was phase 2 of the opioid crisis. Fentanyl is phase 3. It started happening in it showed up in the drug supply 2012, 2013 in heroin mostly. And what was going on was people would, it's so easy to ship because it's so potent, you don't need much. They would ship the finished fentanyl directly in from China through the U.S. mail and press the pills here in the United States. And then working with the Chinese government, the United States government came back and said, no more of that, let's stop that. So they shut down the export of fentanyl. But by then, the cartels, who really act like venture capitalists, they look at the drug market in the United States, and when one gets legs, they come in and just vertically integrate it. So they go, young people have, they have affinity for pills. And we're doing all this great work selling all these opioids, but sooner or later you graduate to the needle. People don't like needles. Let's give them the pills they like. So they started bringing the raw materials in to make the fentanyl south of the border. They synthesize it south of the border and start shipping it up north. Well, what did that do to the geographic distribution? When that happened in 2018, 2019, the western United States got slammed because the I-5 corridor, and that's why in California you have hotspots that are like San Diego, Bakersfield, Fresno, Portland. It's like things that instinctively you wouldn't think of because it comes up the I-5 corridor and goes east now. And of course, the Texas border as well. Mostly through ports of entry. That's another myth, is that people are walking across the river, crossing the border with backpacks, bringing pills in. That's not what happens. Mostly, sadly, it is often American citizens with American licenses and American license plates who drive south of the border, pick up the fentanyl, and bring it back north through ports of entry because they're not checked as much. Or it's in commercial vehicles and stuff like that. So the West really got hit to where the youth drug deaths in Oregon are the fastest growing and the highest in the country now. Does that help?
So Jenny, then
Yeah.
Catherine. So.
Is it safe to
Or-
keep
I can hear.
We can hear, but maybe everyone else can.
I was just wondering if it's safe to keep the Narcan in the car, or if it'll get too hot and will render it.
It gets
How do
too
you
hot. So, basically, 77 degrees is
Ideal. And what Narcan is recommending that you want to go ahead and keep it under 104 degrees. And if you need to carry it in transit, it's okay until 104. And then you cannot freeze it, preferably not refrigerate it. We just distributed it to the Boys and Girls Club, and they said to me, we live in the valley, it's sometimes 104, and I said, that's when you could go ahead and refrigerate a little bit and then take it out when you need to in transit. So keep it on you all the time. Do not leave it in your car. That's why as soon as you get it at home, sit your kids down, go to Ed's website, talk to them, put it in their backpack, Ziploc bags, backpack. You go to the pharmacy and pick up your own. This has to be on them because the kids are going to experiment with each other, not with you. They're going to be at home alone. I just want you to remember that young man that says, I don't use alone. You want to be making sure that your kids' friends have this as well. So I can't emphasize this important message as much as I can. Your kids' friends have to have this because they can't Narcan themselves. Once they take the pill, that's it. Please, thank you.
I would add to that it also has a shelf life, but like a lot of things that have a shelf life, people are like, yeah, okay, it's a year, but don't worry about it. It stays good for a while. Don't let it bake in your glove compartment, but carry it with you. Don't worry too much about the temperature. The other thing we have on our website, the New Drug Talk, is about a 2-minute film that talks about how to recognize an opioid overdose. And the thing that's important about that for everybody to know is it's kind of a non-event. So if you're having kids over, back in my day, and one of the kids dozed off on the couch, you just leave them there. Now, 2023, you gotta check on them. If they wake up, great. They're a little cranky, no problem. If they don't wake up, then you go through the steps like in our video, check for pinpoint pupils. If you see the other signs of an opioid overdose, get Narcan right away. An opioid overdose looks like going to sleep, and then the respiration just stops.
And then one other thing, in the state of California, there's a Good Samaritan law. Children can carry it legally, without impunity. The second thing, state of California allows Narcan post-expiration 1 year. So the one you're receiving today is good till June of 2027.
The Good Samaritan law is interesting. I have a little joke with the kids that I talk to because it's designed to prevent this scenario where, when we've seen this, and we know a lot of other bereaved parents where a kid was in distress and their friends left because they were scared
Yes.
and they left their friend to die.
Yes.
I tell the high school kids. You do not want that on your conscience. And so the Good Samaritan law is intended to encourage people to do the right thing. So if you call 911, which you must call 911, Narcan wears off, fentanyl is a powerful opioid, it comes back, you can re-OD, so you administer the Narcan, you get them to the hospital. That's what you gotta do. But go ahead and call 911. Don't worry about the first responders, because you cannot be arrested in California for being intoxicated and underage or having alcohol or other illegal drugs at the party if you call for help. I say to the kids, I mean, they're going to take the drugs. You don't get to keep the drugs, but they want you to call them, and they will shake your hand. They will not arrest you. They will shake your hand and say thank you for doing the right thing.
My mom told me that Narcan is technically a kind of drug. Is that right?
Yeah. It's a nasal reversal drug
Yes.
that saves your life. Yeah.
Yes. So does anybody
When
else?
you need it. It's not gonna make you high. All it's gonna do is exactly what Ed says. It actually pushes out the drug that's on the receptors in your brain, and it sits there. So you wake up. But then afterward, there's so much fentanyl there, it pushes the Narcan out, and then it goes on top of the brain receptors, and you go back to sleep. So yes, but you can carry Narcan in California, protect your friends, carry it with you, make sure your friends have it as well.
Yes. And as a side comment, does anybody else find it ironic that we're using a drug to fight drugs?
Actually, I mean, that's a good question. That's actually,
Technically a drug, so isn't that kind of
okay. That's a good question, and the answer is we do it all the time. So there's this thing called medically assisted treatment, where if people are addicted on heroin or other opioids, they are addicted to something because of the high, and they start out that way, and then they have to keep taking the drugs so they don't get sick. And there are classes of opioid drugs, and the difference between a drug and a medication, a little fuzzy, right? And so there are non-addictive opioid drugs that stop long-term heroin addicts from getting sick so they can function, but they don't get high so they can manage their addiction. So we use drugs to cure drug problems as a matter of course here in this country. It sounds ironic, but we do it all the time.
Yeah, it is quite ironic.
It is quite ironic.
Awesome.
Was it okay? We got one over here that's okay.
Hi, so I'm Cindy Young. Donna had mentioned us. My husband Mike. So
Who's a dentist? Amazing dentist.
So as a working pharmacist, I've dealt with prescription drugs for the last 25 years. I've attended DEA trainings, have heard horror stories of teenagers having pill parties where they go to their parents' medicine cabinets, get prescription bottles, and then go to someone's house, empty everything in a bowl. So everything's mixed up. There's
Skittle parties.
right, and but in all of the training sessions, there's no talk of they do talk about counterfeit drugs, so it's on the rise. But what I was going to say is that as parents of anaphylactic food allergy daughters, we have to also live with the fact that they can ingest something and die within 10 minutes. And so they have been trained to carry EpiPens. And as we have talked to our kids about Narcan, I've used the example, and also I think because a lot of kids and parents are familiar with food allergies now, it's taken a long time, and with EpiPens, I kind of explain it like, well, if you're having a food allergic reaction, if you administer an EpiPen, that can possibly save a life and reverse the reaction. So just like a fentanyl overdose, Narcan can reverse it in the same way. And so with a senior at San Marino High School, we told her, when you go to college, you're going to carry your 2 EpiPens, you're going to have Narcan, and you're going to have pepper spray. And even if, when you go, you can actually save lives. And, you can recognize these signs and help educate people. So
just something maybe to think about, because it's really hard to process fentanyl overdose, Narcan. It's so new, but so, so important. And I think when I explain to other young people, I'm like, do you have a friend with a food allergy? Most people do. And they know that they carry EpiPens. I'm like, well, that can reverse it, just like Narcan and fentanyl overdose. So
Vincent had a really good point.
Vincent is Cynthia's husband, and he was talking to me about what about sororities and fraternities on college campuses. They actually now have Narcan available. And in the Midwest, they actually have instead of getting like soda drinks, they actually have a dispensary where you can just get Narcan, and it's for free. So hopefully in California, that's what we're trying to do with our nonprofit, and is just keep giving it to our patient population, which is our youth. We need to keep Gen Z and alive.
We've heard that, the term something has been laced with Narcan, right? So how does that happen? I'm sorry, fentanyl, right? So how does that happen, right? How do we protect our kids from it, and how do we take precautions against it?
Thanks for that. And I address this in my longer talks because it's an interesting, it's kind of a deceptive term. So laced is actually technically accurate because laced just means like stitched together, right? But it implies, and the misunderstanding is, that legitimate medications are somehow adulterated with a little bit of fentanyl. That never happens. That is not what's going on. These are 100% counterfeit. So a pill was laced with fentanyl. The only active ingredient is fentanyl. Everything else is just inert, sticky binder powder and some blue dye to make it blue, or whatever color the prescription med is. They're making them in different colors now, pills. And you hear that fentanyl-laced marijuana, again, it's like, two things can be true. The same drug traffickers are handling some marijuana, and some of their fentanyl gets on the marijuana. So when law enforcement says, we have seized marijuana that has fentanyl residue on it, I believe them. I also believe the scientist that says, we don't think anyone's ever overdosed from smoking a marijuana-laced joint, right? So this laced implies added to something else. The pills, they're just fake. It ends up in cocaine by accident, we think. It's in heroin on purpose. We don't think it's in marijuana. It might be. We think that's a myth. Another way to think about how you want to keep your kids safe, somebody explained to me, think about the supply chain. So we get the question of why are they putting fentanyl in Tylenol? Well, I'm a big proponent in that we need to move away from the war on drugs framing because it's not helpful. I'm a really practical guy. If I thought the war on drugs framing worked, I'd be screaming from the mountaintops. But it doesn't really work because it leads to more misconceptions. Like rainbow fentanyl. Now they're making colored fentanyl pills because they want to kill our children on Halloween. No, that's not the thing. It's a business. These people are in it for the money. So imagine a drug dealer dropping $40 pills for free in trick-or-treaters' bags in her apartment complex on Halloween. She does that 10 times, she's out $400. That's not how a drug dealer thinks. Right? So it's much better to think of this as a business, and then some of these things that don't seem to make sense start to make sense. And as part of the business, it's the supply chain. I said, what about mushrooms? When are we going to hear about somebody getting fentanyl in their psilocybin mushrooms? And the answer I got was, cartels don't control that supply chain. People grow their mushrooms in their closets. Here in the United States, it's homegrown. Cannabis, we live in California. Get your cannabis from a legal dispensary, please. Let's not do anything that's black market in this day and age. But see, the cartels don't control that supply chain as much as they used to. The cocaine, the heroin, the meth, the fentanyl, they control that, and all that stuff is in the same warehouse somewhere back there in the supply chain, and they contaminate, and that's the contamination that happens. They're not trying to put it in Tylenol and kill Americans. That would put them out of business. They want us all addicted. They're more like parasites than predators. That's the way I put it. They win if people continue to come back and buy their stuff.
Are there any attorneys in here? Attorneys?
God, I hope not.
Attorneys, none?
I'm in big
Judges?
trouble.
Judges? So my big thing, and Ed, I'd love you to talk a little bit about that and see what you think. So, third-party monitoring, parental monitoring on Snapchat. So our kids are getting exposed to the drug dealers on Snapchat. So there was a very public personality. Her son died from one pill, and it was Dr. Laura Berman. And she tried so hard to bring the legislation to actually have the third-party parental monitoring, and it died on the floor because we don't have ad packs. Snapchat has ad packs, TikTok, Facebook. And that's what we have to do as parents. We have to step up and we have to protect our kids. And it's a hard talk. You got to talk to your kids and figure out how to have that. And thank goodness we have someone like Ed to do that. And I'm working with a couple of legislatures right now because there's something in Oregon right now that's coming down the pipe. It's a little too weak. It's actually allowing monies for Narcan to be bought, so they're distributed through the high school. That's too late. It's going to come down in a couple of years. Like, we have to do this now. So local grassroots, that's why Ed and I, we're doing this, because we're getting the free Narcan. Our websites are trustworthy, we're trustworthy people, we're embedded in the community. But if you know any judges and legislatures, I'd love to talk to you, so thank you.
Yeah, so I'm happy to comment on the Snapchat thing. We're probably on a little bit different page on that one. I actually, about 6 months ago, was asked by Snapchat to serve on their Global Safety Advisory Board. So I worked with Snapchat to try and make their platforms safer for kids. And one of the things, their position on the third-party monitoring, and this is what I say to parents, is what I don't get is the logic that says, I don't trust this technology to keep my kids safe. So to me, the answer is to layer another technology on top of it and trust that one. And the people at Snap are like, we've looked at these third-party monitoring systems, they're not very good. And the other thing is privacy. Privacy is a big thing for social media companies. And when I go to these meetings, I say, parents need more access to what's going on the Snapchat application. And another advocate will say, no, because I'm in the child abuse area, and a lot of times the parent is the abuser, and the kids need a place they can get away from the parent. So there's competing priorities there, and so what I say is, you have to have first-party parent monitoring. If your kid has a social media app, you have to have that social media app, and you have to know how it works, and you have to be on it, and you have to know who their friends are, and I'm sorry if they complain, but you go, sorry, but I own the phone, and if you're under 18 and they go, yeah, but it's my phone, I have a right to privacy, legally, under 18, they don't. It's your phone, you can do whatever you want, and they have to give it to you, they have to give you the password. So it's a tricky issue. A lot of the social media companies are working hard to make their platforms as hostile as they can to these drug dealers, but they're never going to bat 1,000. They just change their usernames, they move over to Telegram or Discord, or they advertise on Instagram and they say, let's hook up over on Snap. It's whack-a-mole. So you have to take responsibility for yourself. You can't outsource your monitoring of your kids' social media apps to a third party. That's just my personal opinion. You had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted a comment. I know we're really focused on adolescents here, teenagers, but I just wanted to point out, we're in a pediatric hospital, and we do get a lot of infants, mobile infants, toddlers, and school-aged children with ingestions of fentanyl. We've had a lot recently, because they pick things off the floor, they have things in their mouths, children are finding them in medicine cabinets, and it is happening with younger population too, so just to be aware that it is relevant to a larger age group now for accidental ingestion.
It's a big problem, and we all have to kind of get together. Then we haven't even talked about the law and order thing and trying to prosecute dealers and that kind of thing, but I love what you're doing, and we do the same thing. Is we have instructions on our website talking to some young people today in their 20s, and, you know, Cynthia talked about the sibling issue. It's really tough for siblings. There are people, if you're 25 or 26 years old right now, there's a good chance you've lost 5 or 6 or 8 friends. I don't know about you, but I hadn't lost that many of my friends when I was 25. And I grew up in the Vietnam era where I watched those boxes come home on the planes on the news every night, and I knew what a Vietnam widow was, and it was heartbreaking. We lose more people to fentanyl every year than the total body count for the Vietnam War. This is a national crisis, and you know, there's a whole lot of things going on above our pay grades, but the one thing you can do is make sure everybody knows, your kid know, get informed as possible, do your research, go to our websites, and just spread the word, because that's the only, all we can do is control what we can control, protect ourselves until we figure this out, and that's going to take a long time.
Thank you again to Ed and Cynthia and Donna. I just checked at the back table and only 31 vouchers have been taken so far. So if you have not filled out a voucher for your box of Narcan, please do so. And I would invite PFA board members to join me at the back to help to distribute the boxes of Narcan. Thank you all very much for coming this evening.